Hey all, Grollo here. Welcome to an Architect's Week in Gaming. We're talking about week 6 of 2025, and today we will be talking about the Star Citizen January monthly report. Is now the right time to change everything about how Star Citizen is made? And here's a fun one. Could we be playing Star Citizen or any other game on something other than Windows in the near future? Now, before we dive in, I wanted to say that I've been loving all of the comments on my last video, the marathon reaction to Star Citizen Live Special Edition on a more stable universe. And we will absolutely dig deeper on several things mentioned in that video, so stay tuned for that. Now, as for the January monthly report, not a ton on this report. Unsurprisingly, January is a planning month for CIG, but there were a few things. One near and dear to my heart, which we talked about when I covered the November and December monthly report, and that's the ongoing work around the AI and mission tooling, which they call StarScript. And again, this seems to be one of the more significant things talked about in this report. They added a views feature, which they're saying provides designers with a better method of organizing and navigating a bunch of script segments within StarScript. You can think of a script segment as something like, when an NPC kind of pauses and looks down at their mobiGlas, or when you walk through the commons in New Babbage and you see all those people doing yoga or whatever it is they're doing on the mats there. Those loops would be scripts. An NPC can tie together a bunch of these scripts like nodes on a graph to bring that entity to life. So you can probably already see how managing a bunch of NPCs and all these different scripts could get unwieldy, and I'm sure they are having those challenges right now at CIG already. And so I'm sure this will be a very welcome feature and change for the designers. On top of that, they mentioned a master graph redesign, which is what their image here was demonstrating, I believe. They said that they're taking this from a single global overview to a more modular, state-specific perspective, improving the clarity for large AI or gameplay systems. Now, how I read this is that they'll have the ability to look at the graph from the perspective of any one state. Like if you zoom in to that yoga loop, I can easily see what other states my NPC can transition to, into or from that yoga loop, rather than kind of looking at everything top down holistically. I can imagine this being a huge benefit and really simplifying how you develop from one script to the other. Right? You're on here and you're kind of going here and then here. This kind of having that localized view of that state of an NPC's personality, I think would be a tremendous benefit. Now, taken together, this should provide StarScript developers with both the high-level overview of complex AI and logic systems, while also having the ability to drill down into a specific states and view the connections and what's next from there, within the API's personality or activity tree, which is again full of these script segments. So beyond Star Citizen StarScript, a few other shout outs. Sounds like they're using these tools to improve and continue improving on AI, which honestly has a long way to go yet. With that said, I'm I'm starting to wonder if the bulk of the AI work being done isn't making its way into the PU yet, as we wait for these tools like Starscript to be productionalized. Now, I don't know if there's a runtime component behind all this ongoing Starscript work that may need to make its way into game servers and whatnot before we can actually see that. So we may be in a situation where eventually we see a large leap forward with the AI when this stuff finally lands. I'm not for sure, but it's starting to kind of sound that way to me just based on reading these monthly reports. Also, more bug fixing. Sounds like they're taking feedback on the economy, and they continue to kind of tweak things on that front, which is all well and good. They mentioned some more unannounced content in the section where they talked about fixing the pyro missions. No surprise, they've already indicated we're going to see more content this year as they focus on playability, even as features become more rare. I guess content's going to keep coming out this year. And that's all the goodies I found worth mentioning on the monthly report. If I missed anything or there's a big thing in there that I overlooked, drop me a comment. I'd love to hear it. As far as our next topic, which is this the right time for a bunch of change? I just want to roll a clip. If you recall, in my reaction to Star Citizen Live on A More Stable Universe, I posed the question a few times, I think, on whether this was the right time to make such a change. And I was, and I'm still leaning towards yes, but with slight hesitation. And it turns out Voidyvids published some similar thoughts last week. So let's take a look at it together.
Second question, if Star Citizen becomes a frictionless and flawless experience over the next few months, is there even enough game there to play and keep the player base engaged for long enough until the next big content drop? From my perspective, this question has two answers. On the one hand, you have a player base that is perfectly content with the shallow and repetitive PvE content the game has had on offer for the last 500 years, and think that going to a bunker and shooting a handful of desynchronous NPCs in a high-octane manner is peak modern gaming. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, you do you, but I've always seen the current rudimentary mission and contract system in Star Citizen as a placeholder for a much deeper and dynamic system that I hope realizes its full potential in the coming years. Whatever that might look like, I have no idea. Something about probability volumes and quantum physics, but the current amount of PvE-orientated content definitely has a short shelf life even for the most dedicated of second.
Nailed it. As far as going into a bunker and shooting a bunch of desynced NPCs, now that should be better. As playability, as the focus on playability, improves those types of situations. But we've talked about this on the Discord quite a bit, which I encourage you to join, by the way. There will be a link below. But I'd also love to hear from you in the comments on this one. A lot of people are singing the praises of this move, and I do agree it's probably the right move at the right time. However, while we see a lot of people get frustrated and leave pretty quickly today whenever they realize kind of the bad shape the game is in, once the polish is in place, my feeling is that we'll see a similar retention, just delayed. Instead of leaving immediately because of bugs or whatever, they'll leave in 3 months once the PvE loops are played out. And that's because there's still no reason to do the loops. There's still no reason to PvP or fight for resource or etc. We're still in need of that connective tissue. The most obvious solution is crafting and base building. I've talked about these features quite a bit on this channel, and let me tell you, it's not because I'm excited to build bases. In any survival game, anybody who's played with me will tell you, I'm the guy that crashes in someone else's base. I'm not the one to get excited about putting walls down. That's not me. What excites me about base building is that it gives meaning to everything else, all the stuff I do like to do. It gives us a reason to fight. It gives us a reason to log in, to go collect resources, to optimize the supply chain around getting those resources to somewhere we need to build something. I'm in complete agreement with Voidy on this, that the current amount of PvE content has a very short shelf life. And I know they're planning on adding more content while they focus on playability. However, the same will be true for all such content. Until they connect the systems, that's what it's going to take. So does that mean now is the wrong time for this change? Like how they plan to deliver Star Citizen? No. I think the shift is needed. I just don't think it's a slam dunk, no-brainer. I hear people say this should have been done 5 years ago, and I could not disagree more. It's barely time now, if indeed it is. But remember, CIG's eye needs to stay on the prize, and that prize is Squadron 42's launch. The game needs to be in a place to handle a large influx of players and retain them long enough and make a good enough impression on them so that they will return whenever the game is done and ready. They're certainly better off presenting a playable, if incomplete, experience as opposed to like a feature-rich, buggy as hell one. It's my hope, though, that some amount of connective tissue, like base building or crafting, arrives in time for Squadron, or shortly after. I think could also work. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. Agree? Disagree? Drop me a comment. And that leads us to the last topic for this Monday. A fun thing posted last week by Bellular News about Valve unleashing SteamOS. I picked this one because it's interesting to me. It's something I actually think about quite a lot, beyond what Bellular even mentions. And I just pulled the trigger on a new PC of my own. So the timing is right. Let's take a look at this short clip together.
Yep, you read the title. Today's story is actually a big one for the future of PC gaming. That's because, in my opinion, Windows 11 kind of blows, and at the very least, I want viable competition to it. I don't like Microsoft's advert and tracking stuffed, unusable nightmare that just has updates that break shit all the time. And what's been dangling in front of us for a while now is Linux, but more importantly, SteamOS, where their entire point is to get all the benefits of Linux, but with basically none of the power user requiring quirks. And it's on that front that we've just seen a humongous update because Valve are making moves to bring SteamOS beyond the Steam Deck. It is actually out on another device right now, and all of this is actually prompting a response from Microsoft. But that's not to say that the future is sure and easy. As an example, I'm sure loads of you know, like, you cannot play really, really big games like, say, I don't know, Call of Duty, Fortnite, GTA, basically anything that's got a real hardcore anti-cheat solution, including, say, Valorant. That's just because they're not supported on Linux.
So, let me start by saying that I don't have strong affinities to any OS. I've used them all. They've all got pros and cons. I still remember the amazingly fun OS wars of the 80s and 90s, and I honestly miss it. Back then, we had cool stuff like Amiga and BOS, OS2, all kinds of DOS variants. Anyone remember Desk View? While it wasn't an OS itself, it transformed DOS into a multitasking platform for all those BBS sysops out there. If you were a sysop, raise your hand in the comments. I was. And so yeah, I remember OS competition very fondly, and I would love to see more of it. Today I use Linux, I use Mac, Windows, even some Chrome OS. I guess the only mainstream OS I don't have much experience with is Android. But I do have a phone pre-ordered that runs it, I think, kind of at its core. The Light Phone 3. Anybody heard of it? Aside from that, I've always been an iPhone guy. For tablets, though, I've used iPad, Surface, even Chrome OS tablets. they've all been cool. As far as my current configuration goes, maybe interested. My main display here can toggle between my Windows PC and my M1 Mac Mini. I also have a super high-end MacBook Pro for work only. I only do work on that thing. And then for personal computing on the go, I have one of those Surface Pro 11s with the Snapdragon chip, and I have an iPad. I don't game on the go ever, obviously. And if I'm doing work for someone else or for myself, it doesn't really matter what OS I'm on. I'm either at a bash prompt or I'm in Vim or VS Code or some other editor. So the OS has really just become flavor. Maybe is a good way of putting it, like seasoning. So anyway, I'd love to see games be more portable across these things, the way apps have been. Basically, every app I run now that matters is an Electron app or a browser app or something, so it doesn't even really matter which OS I use, with a few exceptions, one of which is gaming, which makes sense. Now, I was there back on some of the OG versions of Wine. I wasn't always a PC gamer, at least like kind of as heavy of a PC gamer as I am now. And when I wasn't, I mostly ran Linux desktops before later swapping to Mac. I used Wine back in the day to run stuff like Warcraft 3, though. It worked. But the games you could work, like, to get to work with Wine back then were kind of few and far between, and none of them really worked all that well. Even Warcraft 3, which I got working, it crashed a lot. Now, I haven't tried the newer versions of it or Proton, but I understand they've come a long way, which is awesome. What's interesting to me is that as Valve is doing this, Apple's also working on this. A lot of people may have missed it because a lot of PC gamers probably don't pay attention to a lot of what Apple's talking about, but during their last keynote, they committed to doing their own Windows gaming compatibility layer. Now, Apple's rarely first at anything, but they typically make a big splash whenever they land, and so I'm watching this whole area very closely. I think the Windows iron grip on gaming may be a little weaker than we realize, and if indeed it breaks, I think it'll basically be overnight from multiple angles, as far as I can tell. Anybody who's been paying attention to Apple, for example, knows the tremendous strides they've been making on CPU power and even on the GPU side, they're catching up real quick. So it's not a stretch to think like if they had a compatibility layer as powerful as Proton and all of these people in this race like achieved toppling the anti-cheat barrier, like it's not out of the realm of possibility that you could see real competitive frame rates from an Apple laptop, a portable Steam machine, all like kind of working as well as a Windows desktop PC. That could be a pretty wild future, and one I would love to be in. I think it'd be cool as hell. I've been watching this Linux distro called Bazzite. It's Bazzite. Check it out if this whole thing interests you. It ships with like Steam and the NVIDIA drivers and all the Wine Proton stuff, and it has some really nice like update and rollback facilities to ensure your stuff doesn't break too. I'm not jumping on it yet, but if ever we crack the anti-cheat stuff, you can bet I'll probably be taking the plunge. I'll always be a Linux geek at heart. The only reason I'm even comfortable on Mac or Windows is because they all offer terminals with Bash now, or ZSH, close enough. If this topic interests you, go check out the full Bellular news video, which will be linked below. I'll also be linking the Voidy vids below, so check that out. And that's all I got for this Monday. Drop me a comment. I'd love to hear if you'd consider switching operating systems when games just work no matter what, or if you already have. I'm surprised at how many people come into the Discord and they're like, "Hey, I'm running on Linux already." I'm like, "That's cool." Do you like nerding out on different operating systems like I do? I'd love to hear about it. Do you already run something really cool like Haiku or Arca OS? I think is the OS2 one. Haiku is the BOS one. If I had more time, I would definitely be checking those out. They're basically like community continuations of BOS, OS2, and all those cool operating systems from back in the day. I love to see the efforts in keeping this stuff alive and going. Very cool. And what about the changes in the development for Star Citizen? Do you agree or disagree with my position on that? I'd love to hear about either. So let's continue the conversation below in the comments or on Discord. Come join us for now, and I will catch you all again soon. Thanks again. Rollo out.